Imagine that every single person on the planet had an ability to contribute to your benefit. Imagine what type of abundance that would look like. Most people can't even imagine what that looks like because they're so stuck into a different system that they've always known. They don't believe that could exist.
You're listening to the Great Reassessment Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Great Reassessment. Today, my guest needs no introduction. Jeff Booth, the author of The Price of Tomorrow. It's an absolute pleasure to have him here. Jeff Booth, welcome to the show. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Matthew.
One of my first questions I have for you is, what have you been meditating on as of lately as it relates to Bitcoin? Are there any new ideas, new concepts, new ideas of the way you're thinking about Bitcoin and economics? What's going on?
I don't know. That's hard to say. There's always something new in the rabbit hole of Bitcoin, it feels like. Nothing specific though right now. If I said something, it would be this. It would be it's not really about Bitcoin. It's about us. And so most Bitcoiners are still measuring Bitcoin through the fiat system. But that would be normal because how long it takes to understand what Bitcoin is and how deep the rabbit hole is. It would just be normal for there to be way more people who didn't understand it. And then we're starting to understand it and then moving deeper. So there's tons of people that I get asked, well, how many people really understand this? I think a lot of people really understand it, and then they run nodes, then they start spending in it, and it looks like they're outnumbered by everyone else, and it looks like the mass is way bigger number who don't understand it, which it'd be normal that it would look like that, just because it's so early. So that transition is just what we're saying. It's going to be chaotic. It's going to be chaotic as we move through this because I don't think a lot of people understand it yet.
So how do you measure Bitcoin's value? Do you do it in two different ways, or is it strictly in Bitcoin terms?
I try to do it in Bitcoin terms. I try to measure a currency shouldn't measure another currency. A currency should measure things. And so I try to think about things valued in Bitcoin. And then that also unifies everything that I would expect to happen in a global free market. Prices fall. It unifies everything that I would expect to happen in a global free market with hard money. The prices fall, and as technology did its job, prices would fall faster and faster. And so that's what's happening according to Bitcoin. And I think it's a huge mistake pricing Bitcoin in a piece of paper.
So what signals are you relying on to know if Bitcoin's value is increasing or not?
So all pricing in it, but the only thing I care about is does Bitcoin stay decentralized and secure? Because if it stays decentralized and secure, it will reprice everything for sure over time. The energy-backed protocol will reprice everything. It only needs to stay decentralized and secure. So then all of the work in will it stay decentralized and secure? That's where I'd spend my time, and I believe strongly that yes, it will, and it will because we are the nodes that protect it. That we are the people that the people that are building onto it, the people that are building layer 2s and 3s and understand exactly what I'm talking about, are creating this pathway for humanity to thrive on a new protocol that can't be taken back. And so why I know that to be the case is I'm one of the nodes doing that, and I see tons of other people doing the same thing through their work and moving Bitcoin forward. Chaotic, yes. Consensus is not easy, and that's because of the risk to centralization and people. But there's so many people that have now pulled that cover back, and they know that. They'll fight. They'll do anything to make sure that this stays decentralized and secure.
Yeah, you just mentioned like the thriving of humanity. You know, in our current monetary system, I think many would say that a lot of identity-based divisions, racial divisions are fueled by this bad money. And so you may have answered this question before on other podcasts, but how do you think a good money, a sound money, a hard money could could change that?
Yeah, I think I think a really simple thing, if we start in a different spot, and then I'll get to your question. But if you try to imagine what problem you see in the world through a lens and say, how would I make that better by arbitrarily printing more pieces of paper? You see, every problem is actually because of the printing of paper, because of the stealing, the manipulation of money that requires coercion and control. In fact, we've never lived in a global free market. We've always lived in a control system. That control system is designed on the back of broken money because people don't understand that they're giving their power away to somebody who can press a button and steal all their economic energy. And so from that system, you would have to keep people stuck in that system. You would have to lie to them. You would have to divide them, and they would easily think that there's some other person at fault rather than the system at fault, as they fought with each other in that system. And as they fought with each other in that system, they would make the overall system stronger. So, so the root of division is from that system. We so and Bitcoin's the opposite system. It's very competitive. So the free market is very competitive. The free market is a competition to provide other people more value, and it's ruthless because anybody can compete to provide more value than you. So if you create more value for a while, and you're making more money than someone else, they're going to compete against you to try to take your profits and create more value for somebody else. The output of that is prices fall faster and faster. The output of that is cooperation. So it's competitive, but also cooperative. Everybody wins in that. Everybody wins in that system, and the only way somebody can win more than you is providing more value.
And so ultimately, like one of the byproducts of that is, like you're saying, cooperation. You know, you might not necessarily think Joe Schmo is your favorite person on the world, but at least you have to cooperate with him.
Well, you do that now. You will buy from somebody you don't like if they provide you more value. And so the free market is the only thing that we've found to be able to remove our tribalism and cooperate because it serves us.
Yeah, you read about different areas of the world that have been on a gold standard at some point in time. You know, I'm thinking of like places in the Middle East where you had Jews, Muslims, and Christians for hundreds of years, all sort of cohabitating with each other, and they used gold as money or silver.
Yeah,
And like that to me is sort of evidence that it is possible.
yeah. Now we don't, from our current view, or from most people's current view, from within the structure of the system that they live in, they can't understand that that's possible. They can't understand that most of the narrative that is getting them to want to kill somebody else is from this division structure. That it's that or that person's bad, that group of people is bad versus this group. They have no idea that it's caused by that same narrative. And so what we're talking about right now feels like a stretch to them. And I understand why it would feel like a stretch from that system, because they've never seen what we're describing here. What we're describing is something being imposed on the world, not maybe, is being imposed. Bitcoin is already the first global free market that has ever existed. And as long as it's not centralized, it can't be captured. And so if it can't be captured, it's imposing new rules, which are exactly 180 to the rules that we currently most people currently live by.
In your book, you talk about there being second order consequences to a transition to sound money and existing systems fighting like to prevent that from happening. I think everybody, you list wars and revolutions as maybe one of those second order consequences. Are there any other second order consequences that you can think of when a government is trying to either prevent or stop um, something like the transition to a sound money?
Yeah, so they're all second, third order consequences. They're everywhere. Right? Remember, the lens most people are looking through and the rise of that system. They have no idea that they're actually making it stronger through all their actions, trying to gain more money within it. So so it's us. There is no they who say governments or those people, but it's us not allow we wouldn't allow that system to fail. There has to be a transition from outside to reprice that system to be so because we're inside the system. Let's just take the for instance the person, let's say your parents who own a house, and they have a mortgage on on the house, and that house, if you had a deflationary spiral from what was happening, that house would fall. It would keep falling, keep falling, keep falling, and their mortgage would go insolvent. And at the same time as all that pricing is falling, the economy would go into upheaval, and jobs would be shed, and people wouldn't be able to pay their mortgages, and it would keep on falling and falling and falling because that credit money was backing everything. And if deflation was allowed from that credit money, all of the credit money would eventually be gone. So what would your parents do? What would people do? They would beg for more manipulation of money. So we are the system, and we wouldn't allow that to happen. So when you say second order consequences, they're everywhere. It is the way of life that people can't see, that their way of life is inside that system. Government has to get bigger and bigger. Government has to apply more coercion. They have to drive communications. Eventually, they have to track your communications. They have to stop you spending in some spots for spending in others. They have to create more fear in your world. It's all based on more and more coercion, and you don't have a vote on how much money is stolen. So you don't actually live in a democracy anymore. You think you live in a democracy, but you don't have a vote in how much manipulation of money. And as that becomes the most important, because it's not 2% inflation, it's way higher than that. And that inflation shouldn't be measured from zero. It should be measured from the productivity rate that should flow to you in the form of lower prices. So the amount of theft is so staggering. The amount of centralization because of that theft is so staggering. The monopoly power that it creates from a bunch of giant companies, and then who create other institutions to protect their monopoly power is staggering. So the second order, third order consequences are everywhere because it is this. Most people are measuring everything from within that system.
Yeah, I never really thought about that as like you do pay in either the rise in price or the loss of the value of your money or in the quality of the product that you used to get, right?
But
Like you,
that's just the simple side. That you also pay you pay in a whole bunch of welfare programs that are only designed that need more people, more government spending, more theft in those welfare programs because you've created artificial price rises, and when people don't have a job, they can't afford the artificial price rises, so you have to create more. So you're driving this. It's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. Government gets bigger and bigger as a result of that.
have there been any economists who in person, I kind of want to know like in person, like have you ever had like an in-depth conversation with somebody who disagrees, maybe like a critic of your book and do you ever get the sensation that they're starting to see what you see, or I get maybe the sensation that
So lots of people have come to me and PhD economists and said, we never learned in school. We learned we started everything on it that money was credit and why deflation was bad from a credit-based system. We started all of our work on top of that, but we never asked what is money. Could it be different? So I've had lots of people come to me and and change their beliefs over time from the from what they were taught to now where they're going. I haven't had anybody. So you get to this pretty simple, pretty really quite simple statement that I keep making. If the natural state of the free market is deflation. Now, somebody would have to disprove that, right? So I've offered a proof. I've given the backdrop of why that's the case because we create more value for each other. There can't be a monopoly in that system, at least for very long, because we would constantly attack because the monopoly would create rising price or price protection, and then those prices, that margin, would attract more competition to find different ways to be able to remove that and deliver more value. So that's why through that process, prices fall to the marginal cost of production or the utility value, and that process continues to repeat. So in that, you would have to come and say that's not true, right? To be able to attack that, and then tell somebody why that's not true. And if it is true, if the natural state of the free market is deflation, then you would have to come to a different conclusion, and you'd have to say, I don't believe that free markets can exist or they should exist. And then you would have to defend why not. Then you would have to defend who should be in control then. Who should be able to destroy money to be able to create more control, and why would that be a better solution? So but even what we're talking about right now, that would be confusing to somebody who'd built their entire life and reputation inside a system of control.
Do you think it's safe to say that that's really what we're voting on, is who should control money?
So that's what all the votes are. That's ultimately who gets to decide who steals more of your time and energy.
Yeah, I think it is the default position, and because that's what we see play out. And I mean, so somebody would have to argue against what's plainly obvious that, I mean, go to the thrift store, you can buy a digital camera, you can get one for free, right? They costed $2,000 10 years ago. You could get one for free today on Marketplace if you really wanted to. And imagine, like, and we've just been stifling that with the devaluation of money and money printing.
Imagine that every single person on the planet had an ability to contribute to your benefit. Imagine what type of abundance that would look like. Most people can't even imagine what that looks like because they're so stuck into a different system that they've always known. They don't believe that could exist. And the reason it hasn't existed is because if you could control money, you could create a lot of wealth for yourself against somebody else. Essentially, they're working. You tiny slivers of everybody's money you accrue to, and you build a nice story on why that's good for them. And it'd be easy to do over and over again because most people live in a belief system that's normal. It's totally abnormal.
Wow. I kind of want to transition into asking you about protocols. I've heard you say on numerous podcasts, technologies are winner take most, protocols are winner take all. And I've been thinking about trying to think of some other examples of protocols. The internet is one of the most obvious ones, and I think that's a clear example of you you can't get on another internet. There's just if you're going to be on the internet, there's just one internet. Language could be considered a form of protocol, and I've been thinking of other ones. Bitcoin is a protocol. Are there other examples of protocols that you can think of that have not been a winner take all system? And can you define exactly what you mean by
Yeah.
protocol?
Yeah. So protocol is something that is it would. I'm using an example like the internet. And a protocol is winner take all, like I said, and instead of a technology which is winner take most. And protocols come in layers. So so they do something very narrow at the first layer, and then they and then they build in layers, and more functionality comes on top. So when people compare Bitcoin today to the internet, they should be comparing Bitcoin today, or at least Bitcoin, the decentralized secure protocol bounded by energy, the kind of first layer, what they think is the first layer of price. They should be considering that like TCP/IP. That's a, and so, and it wasn't until 1989 that HTTP, the kind of four layer. Now I'm simplifying this a little bit. It was probably seven layers, but I'm simplifying it into four because TCP/IP changed a couple times. But developed by DARPA in late 60s, and then and essentially open protocols win. And so there was the same fight for control of the internet through the internet days, and intranets and a whole bunch of different things of companies trying to say my internet's better. But the open protocol continues to win, and more resources go to it and build more functionality to it. And in 1989, Tim Berners-Lee created HTTP, which was the dawn of the World Wide Web, where you could, but it was, so again, simplifying it, but the fourth layer of the internet. And most people, if you ask them in 1989, what would the internet do? They would have completely missed what would come. If you asked them in 2000, what would the internet do? They would completely missed. They would use it every day in every single thing they do. And it would be the backbone of their phones. It would be the backbone that protocol, that communication protocol, and everything would be everything. So they come slowly over time, and they come deliberately, and they're winner take all. Another example might be energy, electricity. So there's different applications, different use cases of electricity around the different plugs in different places in the world, different voltages, but electricity would be kind of a base layer protocol that had, and I don't know if you want to, it's not a communication protocol per se, but it had massive change for society because you either use it or don't use it.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, could there be, so one example that's popping in my head, like an open source, decentralized, right? Usually those we would think would transition into winner take all systems. What about like internet browsers? Linux is open source, decentralized, but most people still don't use Linux. They're using Google Chrome
Yes.
or Safari.
Yeah. So, but again, those are on top of a protocol, right? Those are a gateway into protocol, and in a free market, it has a whole bunch of different browsers. Right? That's not the protocol itself. It's just a gateway on top of the protocol to be able to use the protocol.
Okay. Okay, and I think that's probably where I was getting hung up. So it's not that like just because a project is open source, it will always transition into a winner take all system, but it's more those aren't necessarily protocols.
No,
I like
no,
using.
definitely not. Yeah, yeah. Protocols are very rare, right? Everybody wants to say that it's a protocol. There's a whole bunch of people claiming protocols, but protocols are very, very rare. That's why they're so misunderstood with technologies, because we see technologies more often. We see it. We just see protocols very rare, and they can and then and so it would be easy. Like if you just think about Bitcoin, the base layer, open, decentralized, secure protocol bounded by energy. And if you thought that's all it would ever do, it would be easy, or if you claimed that's all it would ever do and it couldn't build in layers and add more functionality, it would be easy to create a whole bunch of other coins and say, my coin is better than that coin.
Yeah.
And people would fall for it.
Somebody told me the number, like there's over 100,000 other altcoins, but Bitcoin is the only one that is bound by energy like that. Couple questions from some followers. Miles Dillon wanted to ask if you can explain if governments can just print money, why do they borrow it? This has never made sense to me. The more I learn, the less I understand that aspect.
The simple answer would be to make the optics look like like a free market, to make the banks look. So most of the behind the scenes, most of the money is actually uh, lent into existence from the banks. So when you go to so on a credit based system, that money, imagine if you paid all the money back, all the debt was repaid. Effectively, there wouldn't be any money.
Yeah.
So that when you go to a bank to take a loan, they're lending money into existence and collecting a coupon from you for money that was made up.
The next question, I believe Paula Iverson. You've been on her podcast before. She wanted to know if you had an idea of how long you think it will take for fiat currency to fail.
Huh. Yeah, I don't know. I would suspect a long time. I would suspect longer than people believe, because if I look to other countries around the world where fiat currency is failing, and by the way, every fiat currency is already failing. It's failing now. Like the U.S. dollar has lost 99% of its value over the last 100 years. So it's absolutely failing, but people still believe it's worth money, and so that belief is strong in people. If you look at people in Argentina or Venezuela, they still believe that their piece of paper is worth money, even though it's been devalued like crazy, and even in relation to the US, like millions of times more. And you still have a whole population who believes it won't happen again. I'm okay now. Well, that belief is still in existence, then then it doesn't matter. It's going to keep happening until the belief has changed, and until people realize they don't have to play by the rules of that game anymore. And so that's in it. When I said it's not Bitcoin, it's us. It's a cognitive dissonance of being in a system and understanding the truths I'm saying. The natural state of the free market is deflation, right? And then moving your time to something that can't be stolen from you. But so it's our mind going through that, and so you could just look around the world and you could say, how many people, how many even Bitcoiners really understand what I'm saying? Probably relatively, as far as portion of Bitcoiners, probably a small number, or small percentage. Probably a large number, but a small percentage. And then how many people even understand Bitcoin at all right now? Small. So it's going to take most people are still caught in that belief system, and giving all of their energy to something that's stealing their energy. And they think it's somebody else.
Do you think there's a critical mass that there's eventually a tipping point, or do you think it will have to be just clear bottom up adoption all the way to the top or will there be an avalanche once there's like a tipping point?
Yeah, so I think it'll come in kind of an S curve or exponential. I think it'll feel like that. But the point here isn't, it doesn't matter for you. doesn't matter for anybody. Like every single person on the planet has their choice, right? Right? Like you today could move all of your time and energy, and you probably do, into Bitcoin and be protected against it, and spend and spend in it and move. So you don't have to wait for everybody else. You don't have to care what they're doing. You could help them understand this, but you don't. It doesn't actually matter to you.
My brother and I, we teach free classes on Bitcoin using the Me Premier, My First Bitcoin curriculum, and we're working on our second cohort right now.
Awesome.
And it's just been, we graduated 12 students. We're about to do 8 more, but it's just, sometimes I feel like, you know how like when you see like people making a sculpture, right? Like you take the hammer and chisel, and just a teeny little bit comes off every single time. And we're sort of just in like this sea of people, 8 billion people on this planet, but it's making differences in individual people's lives because they're
Yeah,
understanding.
so I love that you're doing that, John Dennehy. I'm actually on his advisory board and we premier Bitcoin, and so they do great work. The and so you see this happening, and a whole bunch of people touching other people, and then those people touching other people, and so each time you're doing it, you're unlocking somebody from and I think you described it really well. It's almost like these these breaks that they have to go through, and they have to let go of what they thought was true about the way the world worked, and come to a different truth, and then choose to be able to spend more time in that. And it's I find it really enjoyable watching that process. Right, I find it that I'm sure you do too, because when you unlock somebody that then it changes their life. It's very powerful.
Yeah, it is. We have a few students who just 7 weeks ago never even asked the question, what is money? The concept of money storing their life energy, storing their time and labor so they can carry it forward into the future and redeem it later. That concept was foreign. And then understanding how, well, if governments can inflate the money, are they really inflating the money, or are they inflating your life energy, and it's losing its value? And that, for a lot of people, just, well, yeah, I am working longer, I am working more hours, and the quality of my life has not improved. It's actually either remained the same or gotten worse. And so
Yeah,
it's fun to help
yeah.
people
It's
see.
yeah, and so when people can actually take accountability, and they don't have to wait for anybody else, right? You learn this, you start to move, and you don't have to wait for somebody else to hand out something to you. You just move. That's the proof of work of this system, which is so beautiful.
I have a I have family in Argentina. You mentioned it earlier, and I sent a gift. Well, it wasn't a gift. It was my uncle wanted to buy something, and I mailed it to him. And he's like, "Hey, how do I pay you back?" And he did his first Bitcoin transaction. And for somebody who lives in a place that has suffered such monetary disease, I would say, where money can be locked up. Hey, one day the banks are closed and you can't withdraw your money. To send value without anybody's permission, very low fee, and not having to use a bank. The me doing that for my first time, because in the United States we have more freedom and we haven't seen the same type of things as Argentina has. Like for him it was just completely bewildering. Like, wow, I we're transacting and you're 3,000 miles away,
Yeah,
and it was just it's really cool. Um,
that's awesome. Yeah, and you can see that accelerated. Like I can see that accelerating all around the world. So when you're in this ecosystem all the time, and you're spending in this ecosystem all the time, you can see how would you stop that, right? You can't stop that. That's what's accelerating. So, but the first time you do it, the first time anyone does it, they're same. I think it was the same for me. kind of a mind-blowing experience.
So, Jeff, as we get to wrap up here, are you working on any other books, projects? What do you got on the horizon?
So spending a lot of time on ego death, having a blast and doing it, spending helping entrepreneurs build their dreams. I toying around with a new book. I've been when I can get to it. I've been getting to it. It's hard with my time these days, but yeah, that would be that's where I'm spending most of the time in ego death.
Well, I mentioned it offline to you a second ago, but I recently just purchased a ticket to BTC in DC. I'm excited to go to my nation's capital and hear you speak. And it'd be great to meet you in person. And are you looking forward to that conference? Do you know anything about the program?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the conference. I think it'll be a high signal event. The yeah, so yes, I'm looking forward to that conference.
Thank you so much for your time. I know you're very busy, and it's just been a pleasure to kind of just speak with you and glean off your insights. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Matthew. My pleasure.